introduce Tom Purciel. Tom is the Associate Planner with the El Dorado County Long Range Planning Division. In 2003 and again in 2004, Tom worked with the County Ag Department's Noxious Weed Abatement Program. Since 2004, Tom has worked on a variety of land use and permitting projects, such as the review of building and land use permits and development of new county ordinances, including the 2015 zoning ordinance and sign ordinance updates for El Dorado County. Tom is currently working on the county's Scenic Corridor and Oak Resources Management Plan ordinances. Tom enjoys working with industry associations, community members, and county staff to help reduce permitting regulations and encourage private investment in El Dorado County. Okay, Tom, it's all yours.
Great. Can everyone hear me? Excellent. I'm very glad to be here. I have looked at agricultural codes for approximately the past 15 years in different roles within El Dorado County. And so as we go throughout this presentation, if you have questions, some of the material that I'm going to be looking at is fairly complicated, so don't feel panicked if you don't understand something. Feel free to ask any questions that come to mind, either as part of this, or you're always welcome, if you think of a question later, to shoot me an email at my address there on the screen or at the contact information at the bottom there. You're more than welcome to do that. But what we're going to look at today is an example of navigating and negotiating the permits and rules, how that looks in El Dorado County, and how El Dorado County farmers and ranchers and folks that do the work have helped shape the process of what are our current rules and regulations. So as we look at it, we'll look at a little history and background of agritourism in El Dorado County and some of why it's an example for many agencies that like to look at that. We'll also look at how the process itself provides many opportunities for folks that are interested in the process or are looking to change local rules, how they can actually shape the new rules to fit their needs. Then we'll look at some examples of how El Dorado County rules have been tailored to promote agritourism and address the needs of all the participants, both farmers, ranchers, visitors, etc. Also, just taking a quick look, our ranch marketing or agritourism goes back, just after the gold rush, but let's bring it into modern history. Starting about 1960, we have the first weekend-only ranch marketing events up in what we call the Apple Hill area. Just kind of going over it quickly, we started with just a few weekend events with 4 growers. I'll explain that a little bit more. Then we worked, then in 1981, we actually had our first formal ranch marketing code to address the needs of the farmers and ranchers. And all this came about over 50 years ago with the decline of the pear market and wholesale apple revenues. And it started with a group of 4 growers in the mid-1960s that were looking for a sustainable use of their land. And they were also looking to come up with something that would benefit all participants. That gave what was the novel idea of ranch marketing, combining tourism with direct marketing of the product. And so what began in 1960 has now blossomed, not to use the ag term, into something now that leads the state as far as being an example of ranch marketing and agritourism and making rules work for the needs of the participants. So we'll take a look at a little bit of how this came about. So in 1981, we had our first ranch marketing code. Much contribution was given by the actual farmers and ranchers that gave input to the process. I'll explain a little more later. In 1988, we updated the ranch marketing ordinance. And in 1998 to 2001, many of the interested farmers, ranchers, and other folks we call stakeholders participated in a major update, including a ranch marketing committee that our farmers and ranchers gave input through. We also had growers associations of all types, ranchers, marketers, constantly bringing in suggestions for the code, submitting comments to decision makers throughout the process. And so it was a fairly major effort. In 1998 to 2001. And so that led So that basically led to what more of our recent updates. Again, the farmers and ranchers brought in more input and participated on small temporary committees, which it represented various types of the ag industries, and they gave additional input from 2002 to 2003, including a subcommittee formed, a small group formed to work on the new winery ordinance. In 2009, we had adoption of a new standalone winery ordinance, which is very similar to what we still have today. In 2010 to 2015, we had more industry-based associations and small groups, formal and informal, that helped the county review some of our current updates to our zoning code, especially those that had to do with agricultural uses and permitting. That brings us into the current projects. Last year, our county completed a targeted general plan amendment and a zoning ordinance update and sign ordinance update. The reason I bring those up is because the agricultural industry, again, was heavily involved with looking at all agricultural parts and pieces of the code updates to make sure that those code updates continue to meet the needs of the agricultural businesses, farmers, ranchers, and visitors. And so that was just a thumbnail. Again, there's way more information here over the past 50-some years that has happened. Feel free to send me an email, any questions if you want to know more about that. But just taking a look, we're going to break it down into some of the pieces of how farmers and ranchers could get involved in the process and what the process looks like. It began again in the mid-1960s with a rancher called Edio Delfino. He was one of the original four founders of what is now the Apple Hill Growers Association. He was on the County Agricultural Commission advising our Board of Supervisors and other folks for about 33 years, and he's still farming at about age 85. So that's how that's looking. So just to give you an idea of the current state of agritourism in El Dorado County, just taking a look at my arrow here. El Dorado County is here. Lake Tahoe is just to the east. As you can see, the darker colors represent the number of winery and agritourism operations. As El Dorado County is a darker color, it does represent something around 200 active winery and agritourism operations, plus or minus, and it is still increasing. So El Dorado County has made great strides toward agritourism. The process itself is what a lot of folks face. These process steps are based mainly on state law, and what I'm looking at here is how individuals, ranchers, farmers, interested parties can help mold the process to suit what their needs are. So I'll just quickly go over the process. In 2002, the county began a quick process to update ranch marketing laws to be more friendly to small farmers, especially those who live on residential designated or zone land. So in this case, farmers and ranchers constantly gave input to our county board of supervisors. That resulted to update the rules. That resulted in a first draft ordinance written by industry association input, with a lot of small committees that were formed representing the different industries, especially regarding small family farms. County staff reviewed those draft code suggestions that were written by the farmers and ranchers and folks that wanted to see their interests covered in the new code. Then the Agricultural Commission, representing the various ag industries, had a public hearing to formalize the code and make sure that all the parties were represented. Planning Department put all that information together in a report, presented it to the Planning Commission. That's the body that makes recommendations to our county decision makers, the Board of Supervisors. Next, the Board of Supervisors held a hearing to formalize what was going to happen. Planning Department prepared a required environmental document as required by state law. The Agricultural Commission reviewed the draft environmental review and looked at what the rules were proposed to change to. Planning Department again summarized the project, the update to date, to give an idea of what was all the ideas that were being proposed. The Planning Commission heard the project again, and then the Board of Supervisors made a final ruling. They had actually adopted the new regulations in 2003 to be more friendly to small farms. It is a fairly complicated looking process, but it helps if interested parties look at the processes, not just 12 steps, but 12 opportunities to bring in additional comments and make sure that the rules the proposed rules continue to meet the industry needs. So that's what we're looking at there. And then my last section is how stakeholders can influence the new regulations. So who is a stakeholder? Basically, it's anyone involved, a person who has an interest in or an investment in something and who is impacted by or cares about how it turns out. So just looking at that process, trying to simplify it a little bit, these are some of the opportunities that would usually come up as part of a code update. Some of the biggest opportunities are 1 and 6. So opportunity 1 is constant, where industry-based citizen advisory committees or small farm individuals can give input to our Board of Supervisors and constantly influence the process. Second opportunity is whenever Planning Department staff make reports to our decision makers, there's always many opportunities in all of our counties for the public and the farmers and ranchers to make comments and review those draft documents like draft codes. Opportunities at the Agricultural Commission we talked about, that's one more hearing where the ag industries break down the proposed changes, and the public again can comment and look at those and give suggestions. Another comment for the public, including farmers and ranchers, to give suggestions as Planning Commission meetings. Another opportunity often overlooked, that California law requires an environmental review of all new regulations, essentially. And that environmental review also allows for public review and comment of any potential environmental impacts or code changes that are connected with those. And then this opportunity, number 6, is constant throughout the whole process. Anytime the Board of Supervisors have a meeting or hearing, that's another opportunity for farmers, ranchers, agritourism professionals to give more input. Input essentially from these folks can come in at any time throughout the process, even until the gavel goes down at our Board of Supervisors meetings. So my advice would be to please look at those and as opportunities, not just difficulties or steps. So now what we'll look at some samples of the new regulations that were developed and some of the things to do, some of the things not to do. This is an opportunity, this is a diagram that shows how some regulations were updated based on stakeholder input. Not just, again, farmers, ranchers, but the folks interested in the process. For example, all of us involved in farming and ranching typically want to know, can I raise farm animals on my property in El Dorado County? Most of the agricultural areas already did, but there were many zones up until a year ago where the process was not certain. We didn't know. This is a flow chart that I made to explain how difficult it was to come to a decision based on the zone a property was located in, based on the size of a property, and based on the type of farm animal. There were more questions than answers. That was changed as part of our 2015 zoning ordinance update to put all the information for small properties on a single table to get a quick yes or no answer with code references to specific development standards, such as if I wanted to raise bees, apiaries, one would see certain zones allowed that, certain zones did not, and also a section of the code to look at. If you want to know more, like how many beehives can I have or other things, would be right there. P represents the uses allowed, line represents no uses allowed, and then the code reference is where you would go to find out how to do what you're looking to do. That's an example. Some other examples of recent success stories for ranch marketing include the new winery ordinance, and ranch marketing ordinances. Ranch marketing now in El Dorado County is allowed by right based on specific zoning. For example, if a property is zoned for agricultural use, verified crop production. I saw a question earlier. Typically, most ranch marketing and winery efforts in El Dorado County need to have 5 acres of planted crops. There are some variations in that, and so again, most of them are 5-acre pieces and a minimum of 5 acres of planted crops. That does vary based on the crop and parcel size. Again, our winery code, we updated our 2000 standalone winery code in 2009. It's very similar to the ranch marketing code in that ranchers and other professionals wanted to get uses allowed by right, as long as they met the minimum crop production and parcel size requirements. Again, that's typically 5 acres. And the parcel would have to be zoned correctly, typically 1 or 2 ag zones that would potentially allow wineries. The same thing happened last year with our targeted general plan amendment zoning ordinance update project. That ordinance, I don't see my arrow here. Get rid of my other. But that ordinance allowed many complicated regulations to be simplified, and the update allowed even more opportunities for new and expanded uses on ag zone lands than we even had before. Some of these uses came on about 2 years ago, some last year. The expansion of general plan ag districts to allow more parcels, even non-ag zone, to do farming in those areas, ag homestays, ag and timber resource lodging, guest ranches or dude ranches on grazing land, which was new, and new updates to streamline and clarify the winery and ranch marketing updates. And again, our sign ordinance updates. A couple of the big items that changed were off-site commercial directional signs now allowed by right. So, for example, wineries and ranch marketing activities can allow, I think, a 12-square-foot sign by right off-site, like on a private road, to serve as a directional sign for getting visitors to their events or venues. It also formalized a community sign program allowance for industry associations, which would allow, for example, the Apple Hill growers to create their own custom sign programs for the number, location, size of signs, countywide as far as one program that can be approved by our Board of Supervisors, and that's what they have done in the past. I did have a couple of resources just winding up. Again, the information is voluminous, and there's way more information on the rules than we can cover in 10 or 15 minutes. But some resources you might look at include the El Dorado County Agricultural Department. There's a link there. There are a wealth of information. The El Dorado County Zoning Ordinance, I put up the Article 2, the section that talks about those ranch marketing, winery, and other agricultural uses and standards. This section contains the winery code. I saw a question on that earlier. There should be a section just on wineries. I don't have it up in front of me, but that will give you a table that allows uses, minimum parcel sizes for each use, and what the process is. We also have the El Dorado County Farm Bureau webpage there, which is also a real good resource here for local information. And so I hope you were able to hear on my connection, but I appreciate it. I'd be happy to answer any questions when we have that time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. That was awesome. Okay, well, we've got some questions, and we've had quite a few questions, and we will be posting all the presentations and all the slides on our websites. You'll be able to see them. The first question for you is, Tom, what are your current challenges?
Good question. One of my current challenges is to reach our Board of Supervisors with, I guess it's looking at complicated codes and trying to make them simple for all users to understand. For example, when our County Board of Supervisors has to look at our woodland oak tree protection codes, my challenge is to write a code that's simple for the person on the street to understand at the same time as get the information required by state law across to our county decision makers, which can be sometimes daunting because it's tough not to use government-y language. And our challenge is to reduce the complex language in the codes wherever possible to make it usable for everyone that's going to follow the codes.
Thank you, Tom. So I am very sorry, everybody, but the question and answer series session does not seem to be working because we're having all kinds of audio problems connecting to our presenters today and an echo. So I am going to encourage you, please, to type in more questions if you would like into the question and answer forum. We're going to leave that open for you to type in your questions. We're going to continue the conversation online in Farms Reach. So please join the Farms Reach California Agritourism group, and we will continue to chat online on the California Agritourism group. And check out the links here. We have some useful links. Tell us about your experience today in the box right there, in the box right under the presentation screen. Tell us if you learned anything today. And if you want to hang out, Karen has typed in, given us some answers to some earlier questions. So I'm going to go ahead and read some questions and answers from Karen that might be helpful to some of you. We have a question to Karen. Question is, if we have a kitchen in our barn, can we use it to make meals for our guests? And the answer Karen has already told us is no. Any food service Any food served must be prepared in a licensed kitchen by a licensed caterer or by someone holding a food safety certification, and all other food preparers must have food handler cards. And she also says there's one exception, and she's not sure if this is statewide. It might only be in her county and in some counties, so you have to check with your health department. But if you're only doing a one-day event, for instance, a special farm stand barbecue in the summer months, in Sonoma County, you would not need to obtain a permit from the health department to prepare and serve the food. However, you're still responsible for good food safety practices, and again, you would need to check with your county if you're thinking of doing something like that. And that would be the same, I believe Yolo County is in a similar situation. And then we have a question, how do I find out what zone my property is listed in? And this was a question to Tom, and the answer is check with your county or municipality planning department. We have a question. If an activity is not listed on my parcel zone, am I allowed to do that activity if it's not listed? And the answer is, of course, maybe. It depends on if the code is permissible, meaning if it's not listed, it's not allowed. Or not, meaning if it's not listed, it might be allowed with permission from the county or municipality. So in general, it's pretty complicated, and you need to check with your planning department if you have questions. So I think we're going to have to close it here. Please go ahead and answer tell us about your experience today, and fill in that quick poll, and visit us again. We hope to see you in 2 weeks for the next seminar. And thank you very much, everybody.